Welcome, everybody, to the Retirement Success in Maine podcast. My name is Ben Smith. You can always find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, also our blog.guidancepointllc.com. If you want to reach out to us, please feel free, Ben Smith at guidancepointrs.com. But with me, as always, is the man who's like the punchline to my setup, the callback to my long-winded story, the one who always says yes and to my ridiculous ideas, my co-host Curtis Wister. How you doing today,
I'm
Curtis?
doing great, Ben. Doing great. So definitely going to try to keep up with you today. I think this conversation is going to be a really fun one.
Yeah, and I know one thing we hear a lot from retirees and our clients is they're looking for ways to connect with their adult kids, their grandkids, and with new communities they might be moving into. But sometimes we forget that connection isn't just about just showing up; it's about being playful, present, and engaged.
That's right, Ben. And, that's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's episode. We're diving into the world of improv. Yeah, that thing that you may associate with comedy clubs and acting classes. But we're gonna dive into improv and discover how its core principles can help retirees build stronger relationships, again, especially with their grandchildren.
And joining us is someone who lives at the intersection of storytelling, stagecraft, and family life.
That's right. Our guest today has spent the last 20 plus years balancing a career in international business development with a deep passion for storytelling and performance. So, our guest has performed professional improv across Europe and the United States. And when his kids came along, he shifted to teaching it. So, using its powerful principles to work with Fortune 100 companies, Maine's Department of Education, at risk youth, and everyday people just looking to build trust, confidence, and joy. Our guest is also the author of the debut thriller novel Questions of Iron and Blood. And he lives right here on the coast of Maine, where he still surfs and plays hockey, although I'm told the hockey is when his knees allow. So if you would please take a second and just welcome our guest, Chip Brewer, to the Retirement Success in Maine podcast. Chip, thank you so much for coming on our show today.
Curtis and Ben, thank you so much for having me. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here and I really appreciate you guys inviting me in.
Likewise. Well, Chip, thanks for coming on. And we obviously want to start our show and get into improv, but for the audience that maybe doesn't know you, we want to start with your personal story. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you discovered improv first, and what was it that drew you in beyond the performance aspect?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I have so the improv has always been a side gig for me. So I've had a corporate gig. I've worked for management consulting and market research firms internationally for the bulk of my career, about 25 years. And in 1998, my wife and I moved to Amsterdam to help open up an office for a company I was working for called Forrester Research. And there's a really good, in fact, one of the best improv theaters in the world is in Amsterdam. It's called Boom Chicago. And at the time, Seth Meyers of late
Oh,
night
yeah.
fame and SNL fame was one of the actors there, and then more recently, folks like Jason Sudeikis and Brendan Hunt from Ted Lasso
Wow.
both came through Boom Chicago, and Jordan Peele of Key and Peele and a bunch of movies. He's also a Boom alum as well.
Wow.
And for my 28th birthday, my wife gave me an improv class. And she handed me an envelope, which we don't generally give each other envelopes for our birthdays. So I was like, that's weird, right? And she said, before, like, I went to grab it and she kind of held on to it. And she said, you have to promise not to quit your day job. And I thought that's an odd thing to be saying, but okay. And I took it. And I'm like, oh, I'm definitely going to quit my day job. So I took the classes there. There were two levels of classes. They went for multiple weeks. And then I ended up auditioning for and joining another improv troupe in Amsterdam called Off Your Head. And so we performed every Sunday night at the Comedy Cafe for a couple of years while we were living there. And then, we moved back to Boston. Eventually, I auditioned for and joined Improv Boston and got into a couple of shows there. And it's just the thing that I love the most about improv is that it's fundamentally a group activity, right? It's a team sport.
Mhm.
And I love doing, I think that when we're on teams as humans, we can, the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. And improv is a really tangible way to see that happen. And there's an incredible joy that comes from contributing to the creation of something new and unique that you could never have done on your own and by the same token they could not have done without you because you also contribute, right? So that's just like an amazing feeling. It's the same feeling that people have for being in a band that's jamming, right, or playing jazz, right? It's a very similar kind of a concept. So that's what got me into it.
Love that.
Yeah.
And I want to ask a question and just put a pin on improv for 1 second, but I want to ask
Yeah.
a little bit about your novel you wrote. Can you just tell us a little bit about Questions of Iron and Blood and what inspired you to write that?
Yeah, sure. So it's a thriller novel, and it's about it looks at the Boston Marathon bombing, and in my world,
Okay.
there's a conspiracy behind it, and it's the beginning of a trilogy. So the first book takes place mostly in Boston, and then the
Okay.
second and third books, I'm about three-quarters of the way through the second book, and then there'll be a third one as well. But it continues to become more of a global conflict or an issue than just in Boston. But I had always fancied myself to be a writer. Like I thought, like my mental image of me was I'm a writer. But then when I was around 45 or so, I realized I have not written anything that isn't an email, right? Or a proposal, right? Like, I haven't written anything creatively really ever. So I realized that as I was getting older, I needed to maybe make better use of my time. And I decided that, that was the thing that I had always wanted to be. And so that's why I got into it. I wrote a screenplay with a friend, and that got me into the rhythm of writing and gave me the practice of writing. And then when we finished that, I decided, okay, I'm gonna try to bite off the elephant here and write a novel, which has always been my goal. So that's how I
Nice.
got into it.
Wow.
So I need to check that out, Chip, just because I mean, just obviously living history, right? Is like here's the Boston Marathon, and you just kind of think about obviously 9/11 is such a national importance of a symbol, and
Yeah,
that day of I'm just kind of thinking about all of New England and Boston Marathon and Patriots Day, everybody's off, and we're all
yeah,
watching the marathon and the Red Sox, and that
yeah,
happens, and the whole place is shut down, right? So I just
yeah,
remember vividly that happening and kind of being working, and we all turned indoor TVs to see what's up. I love to.
yeah.
I want to check that out because that sounds awesome.
I was
Yeah,
gonna
and then
say,
we were living in Boston when that happened. I had run the
oh wow.
Boston Marathon twice in college, so like I had a very personal connection to that event. And we were actually on vacation with the kids in South Carolina when that happened, and I mean, it totally freaked us out, right? So it just had a big impression on me.
Sure.
And anyway, that was the thing I
Wow.
decided to go with.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. And I think so. I'm going to get us back to improv here for this show, but I think when the other books come out, we're going to come back and we're going to just go through the books together.
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds great to me.
So, so obviously, we said in the intro there, you've taught improv to everybody here from executives to students to educators. Just kind of what have you noticed about how different people respond to improv and, what makes it such a powerful teaching tool?
Yeah, it's a great question, Curtis. I mean, a couple of things. First, improv, unlike something like quantum physics, improv is something that everybody can learn how to do. In fact, we all do it every day, right? Like we don't have scripts for our days. We don't wake up and check the dailies and see what we're supposed to say at breakfast, right? You just go and do it. And the same is true in your work life, right? So we're actually improvising already. But what people don't know is there are like professional improvisers have figured out like a few frameworks and rules that make that improvisation process go much more smoothly, right? So it's not a random, even though people think improv is random, it's actually far from it. The ideas might be random, but the structure upon which you put those ideas is not random. And so that structure is what gives it the kind of the cohesiveness that makes it interesting to watch. So first of all, it's easy to understand, right? And secondly, we're all kind of genetically predisposed as humans to tell stories. I actually think storytelling is one of humanity's greatest strengths because if you think about it in the long term of evolution, stories are how we pass information from one generation to the next or how to share information across time, right? So you think about if you're a grandparent, right, you actually have 60, 70, 80 years worth of experience and
Sure.
wisdom, right? And to have to make each subsequent generation figure all that out on their own is super inefficient. But if we can share that knowledge and that expertise, then each subsequent generation stands on the shoulders of the previous, right? So that actually is, I think, what makes us one of the things that makes us unique. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier, improv is a team sport, right? I think life is a team sport, and the most important thing I teach my students, I say, listen, if you don't remember anything at all from our class today, the one thing I want you to take home is your only job on stage is to make everyone else look good.
Yeah.
Full stop. Right.
Hmm.
So what that means is if you're on stage with five actors and each of those five actors is thinking only about themselves, then I have one person thinking about me. It's just me.
Mm.
But if I go on stage and I don't think about myself at all, and I worry about Ben and Curtis and Mary and Susie, right? Then now everybody has four people worried about them. And I was an English major at Bowdoin, but I know four is better than one. So that's another. And it's hard in life. Like it's life is easier when we do it together, right? And we
Yeah.
work
Hmm.
together.
Yeah.
And Chip, I can just kind of commenting on that too, and to your point about passing on stories. And again, this is the kind of the job of our podcast, right? Is like
Yeah.
here's learned lessons of retirement and kind of things that we can make each other better. But also, what you just said about your only job is to make everyone else look good. You and I talked like a couple weeks back, and one
Yep.
thing I shared with you was, I'm watching my son play basketball, and he watches AAU basketball, and it's five kids that are only worried about themselves getting their own shot, right? And it's like, they don't really care about them as a team. They all care about, do I look good right now? And you
Yeah.
can tell, right, is the ones that come in and they're all functioning well as in teamwork and roles, and they know who the good passers are, who the shooters are, and putting
Yeah.
themselves in position to succeed. Those are the ones that win.
Yeah.
The ones that come in and just individually trying to shine themselves are the ones that don't do well. So again, you can kind of
Yeah.
see that corollaries all throughout.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
I want to kind of ask one more kind of personal bio question. Just
Sure.
ask a little bit about Growth Story LLC. Can you just
Yeah.
tell us a
So
little bit about your organization, how you help people tell their story, and who you work with?
yeah, absolutely. Apologies if you can hear that there's a truck going by outside.
No, you're good.
So after 25 plus years in the corporate world, I left to start my own company, and I'm really trying to bridge the gap between business and storytelling, or nonprofits and storytelling, because most individuals or companies are really good at talking about what they do, right? We're a bank. How we do it, we help you with savings and checkings accounts and all these other things, right? But they're not great at talking about why they do it, right? And it's the why story. And I'm taking that from Simon Sinek. I did not make up that framework, right? People buy from you because of why you do it, not because of what or how. And why is fundamentally a story, right? So why do you do something? So I saw that there were tons of people with plenty or more business experience than I have, but couldn't tell a story to save their lives. And there are plenty of better writers and better storytellers than me, but many of them have never set foot in a business. And so I felt like I had a kind of unique position where I could bridge that gap. And so that's why I do it. And so part of it is that I can come in and help. So I help uncover and tell organizations' most important stories. That's it. And
Well
so
done.
I can either train you to do it yourself, or I can do it for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and sorry, one more point. So stories, why are stories important, right? We're going to talk about this a lot. Your brain actually behaves differently when it hears a story than when it hears information in some other format, right? A spreadsheet, a PowerPoint deck, even bullet points. So your brain produces, in particular, three chemicals when it hears a story that are important. The first is cortisol, which helps with memory formation. The second is oxytocin, which helps with trust and bonding. And the third is dopamine, which helps with engagement and reinforces positive behaviors. So when you hear a story, then you are engaged, empathetic, and more likely to remember what you heard, right? Which is, I think, what we're all looking for, right? when we communicate with others. So that's why I found a growth story. It was a little longer of an answer than you probably wanted, Ben. Sorry about that.
No, that's great. I think it's helpful for everybody. Again, we like to just kind of build a foundation with you here in our listeners. I do want to kind of dive in here in talking about our show today, right? And kind of using improv to help build connections and retirement. Again, we're taking that kind of grandparent-grandchild angle, but I think just in general. So something you had just mentioned, Chip, right? You're kind of that main principle you work with. Your only job is to make everyone else look good. Okay. So just starting this off here, imagine a grandparent visiting for the weekend, right? How can that mindset change how they show up for their grandkids and maybe even their adult children too? Like, how can we use that mindset in this setting?
Yeah. So another excellent question, right? So I think that today, maybe more than ever before, there is a large and growing gap between seniors and their grandchildren, and even for parents and their children of today's age. And that it's because the youngest of us have grown up in a world that is centered around technology in a way that the rest of us did not, right? So we do, to a certain extent, live in very different worlds, even though we're on the same planet. So given that, it can be very hard to find common ground, right? Between, like, as a 70-year-old person, I don't know how you would find common ground with an 8-year-old, given that 8-year-olds spend 90% of their time online or talking about things you'd never heard of, right?
Sure.
So when you're in a situation where you're uncomfortable or you don't know what the common ground is, you tend to rely on what you know, right? Your own context about the world to discuss things. So I would suggest that when engaging with grandchildren or even parents with their children, um, use the interactions you have to learn more about their world and what they care about, right? So what this means is when you're asking kids questions, like tell me, hey, you mentioned this thing I've never heard of, right? What is that? Tell me more about it, right? And so what that does is you're treating the grandchild as an authority, right? And people love to be given the respect that comes with, hey, you know something I don't know, right? Teach me about your world, right? So first you're demonstrating interest, which builds trust, right? By asking questions and listening very closely to the responses, right? Second, you learned something you didn't know before, so your knowledge is expanding, which is good for you. And third, when you listen to them, it makes them much more likely to listen to you. So one way to think about it is if you just launch into a story about the old days, they're going to switch off, right? Because they have no reason to be interested in that. But if you actually start with tell me about the new days, right? Tell me about your life, and then you actually engage. You do active listening. You don't just like listen and then ignore it. You're actually processing what they're saying and asking intelligent questions and follow-on questions. Then they're much more likely to listen to you when you tell your story, right? And there's always going to be a way for you in any conversation to go from, hey, that's pretty cool. You mentioned X in your life. Well, that reminds me of Y in my life when I was your age, right? There are a lot of commonalities. They're just harder to find, right? You got to dig a little harder. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that ties right to that. Your only job is to make everyone else look good, right? So by
Yeah.
placing that grandchild on that pedestal and you're making them look good, you're more focused on them and not on yourself. And
Yeah.
so love kind of how that ties together.
Yeah.
One of the other core rules of improv you've shared with me, Chip, is yes and.
Yeah.
So a retiree might be spending time with a 5-year-old who wants to play dinosaur astronauts. I don't even know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it
But
does.
right. But what does it look like to say yes and in that moment versus shutting it down? And how does that build stronger connection?
Yeah. So when I teach class, one of the first, maybe agreement might be the foundational principle of improv, right? Which is literally like, yes is whatever you said, I agree to it. And I'm going to add my own piece to it. So now we're equally building the story together.
Mm.
So I do an exercise early in my classes where I have people say, it's a very simple 2-line thing. First person says, hey, let's blank, like, hey, let's go to the store, or hey, let's have dinner together. And the other person just says no. Right? Like you can feel it. Like your heart kind of drops a little bit, right? Like, hey, let's go have some fun. No. And then I say, okay, do the same thing, but now say yes and say, let's go to the store. Yes, let's go to the store. And like that feels better. And then the third and final time I say, now do yes and. So yes, let's go to the store and let's rob it. Or yes, and let's buy it. Or like it doesn't have to be funny, but now I've added details so we're building something together, right? So when someone says no, that's called blocking. And you can block in a million different ways. You can say, yes, I do want to talk about dinosaur astronauts. And first, we're going to talk about the stock market, right? So even though you said yes, and you've actually taken their idea, pushed it to the side, and you want to talk about what you're comfortable with, right?
Mhm.
So when the first person speaks, that's called an offer, right? The offer is let's play dinosaur astronauts in this case, right? And if the second person says yes to that, they say yes, and right to your dinosaur astronaut idea, you can now build something together. So you could say, yeah, you want to play dinosaur astronauts? Sure. You know why there were dinosaur astronauts? Because one dinosaur figured out that, an asteroid was coming and they realized they had to get off the planet. What happened next? And then the kid adds, oh, they had to build a spaceship. Okay, well, what'd they build it out of? Right. And so now you're building this ridiculous story together, but you're equally responsible for it. Right. And now you're and then you get to see how the kid's mind works too, right? So that's how you do it, right? So you, instead of just saying, I don't know what you're talking about, that's ridiculous, I want to talk about something I understand, you open yourself up to explore a space where you don't know anything about it, but you're doing it together.
Yeah. No, that's great. I really like that.
Yeah.
Another thing, Chip, that I think you talk about quite a bit is active listening and how that's essential, right? So we see, a lot of retirees, they mention how hard it is to connect with teenagers, right? We were just talking about that there, or even their adult children who may seem distracted with their own lives or whatever's going on. Perhaps it's the younger generation is being talked at versus being conversed with, and I think there's a conversation there. But how in your eyes can improv techniques just kind of help grandparents or whoever's trying to communicate be better listeners, and how might that kind of help shift relationships?
Yeah, so this is maybe the second most important part of improv, which is active listening. So if you two are on stage starting a scene and I'm off stage and I know I'm going to join the scene at some point,
Mm.
so I'm paying attention. If I'm in my head thinking, oh, I have something funny I want to say, or I want to make sure we go in this direction, then I'm not listening to what you guys are saying or doing. So when I do come in, I'm probably going to screw it up because I'm now out of alignment with where the conversation has gone.
Yeah.
So in real life, right, active listening means not just hearing the words come into your head and not just using your ears, but also using your eyes and even your other senses like touch, right? If you're holding your grandchild and they're squirming all over the place, maybe they're not interested in the conversation you're having, right? Or maybe they are interested, but they can't sit still. So you need to give them the freedom to, right? So you're listening to their whole body, their whole self, first of all. Second of all, a conversation requires equal participation by both parties or all parties involved. If
Mm.
there's not equal participation, it's a lecture, right? So we do an exercise in improv where 3 actors or 4 actors are doing a scene, but you can only speak if you're holding a ping pong ball,
Okay.
right? So what that means is you have the ball, you become very aware of how long you've been holding the ball and how little other people have spoken. So it
Mm.
teaches you to be like, oh, I got to hand the ball off quickly. So actually, it teaches you to go much faster like make it more of a conversation and less of a lecture. I'm lecturing a little bit now, so I apologize for that.
No, it's good.
Um,
You got the
That's
you
why
got the
you're
ping
here.
pong ball. It's fine.
but what happens is if you're cognizant of what how the conversation is progressing, right? How equal the conversation is, then the other side of the conversation will feel like they're being listened to, right? Because A, they have a chance to speak or communicate. B, you've clearly heard them and responded that you in a way that makes it clear you've heard from them. So they're going to feel supported. And when someone feels supported, that's how you build trust, right? They know when they speak, you're going to listen. So they're going to be more willing to tell you more important things, right? And when people trust each other, they can take risks. And risks are where the magic happens, right? When a kid
Yeah.
is willing to open up and show you some of who they really are, is the magic moment, right? And then you also get the chance to show them who you really are as a grandparent or a parent. And so
Mhm.
that listening is really like the first step towards trust.
I love that.
And what I like about that, Chip, is it's again what we talk about a lot is like again meeting of life, and relationships are one of the biggest pieces of life, right? Is
Yeah.
in showing people that you value them. And I think one of those things of active listening just is another sign of showing how much you value people. And also, I can kind of see where the ping pong experiment could go wrong is someone holds onto the ping pong ball and all the other 4 people are staring at that ball and going,
Yep.
when are you going to give this thing up? Right?
Yeah.
When are you going to get out of this? Because man, you've held this for the next 5 minutes. But yeah, I want to go deeper, obviously, into storytelling a bit, right? And I know from what you mentioned the point about shared lessons, right? And I know one thing that kind of gives us value is sharing those lessons. Like, hey, I went through something really painful. It's really important that you know that so you don't have to go through that same pain,
Right.
right? So I know there's a lot of grandparents that want to pass down family history or values. But at the same point, what you said is we're cognizant of not lecturing, right? Because if we start lecturing, then we're not going to get through. So, how would you
Yeah.
use improv's approach to collaborative storytelling to make those moments more engaging and memorable?
Yeah, another great question. So, I think first off, if you establish a relationship with the grandchild that, like we just talked about, where you've demonstrated you will listen to them, right? So they know that if they speak, they'll be listened to, then they will be more likely to listen when you speak, right? It's a reciprocal thing. So if you have set that groundwork, that makes things a lot easier. One idea might be, given that grandparents and grandchildren, I think, again, have this major chasm of experience between them, that's a wider chasm than I think any other generation has had to deal with, thanks to technology. One idea is so in improv, you have to be a different character in every scene, right? And every scene needs a bunch of characters, so you get good at putting on a character. So one idea might be to have a conversation to say like, "Hey, you're driving your granddaughter to go get ice cream," and you're like, they're looking at their phone to figure out how to get to the ice cream place because they have GPS on the phone, right? So you
Mm.
say, how do you like say, hey, listen, do you know that back when I was growing up, right? We didn't have that, right? So how would you get from here to how would you figure out how to get to the destination without technology, right? How would like today, how would you make that happen? And they may not know how, right? Or they may know, right? And then because you're making it a conversation, not I'm going to tell you how I did it, you say, how would you do it? Then you're in a conversation, right? And so then you can engage, and so you do these kind of thought exercises, right? Like, well, how would you get from Bangor down to New York City without a
Mhm.
phone,
Yeah.
right? Or access to a computer? Like you can do it. Like people did it for hundreds of years, right? But like it's incomprehensible to them, right?
Yeah.
So when in class, I'll say, walk around the room, and I'm going to shout out some instructions about how you should be walking and just do what I tell you. So people will start milling around the room, and I'll say, okay, walk around like you're happy. And people will kind of pick up their pace and their heads will go up and they'll be more kind of high status. And I'll say, okay, walk into the room like you just got fired. And their shoulders slump and they get all sad. And then, they kind of walk slower. And so what they're doing is they're putting themselves in someone else's shoes. So trying to find ways with your grandchild to put yourself in their shoes. Like,
Mm.
how would I get to New York using the phone? I've never done it before. Like, you show me how to do it, right? And vice versa is true too. Like, how would you do it without the phone? Gives each side a chance to learn from each other and make it a conversation less of a lecture, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I want to add something you just said, Chip, and it
Yeah.
goes back. It's slightly off topic to what you were saying, but you're talking
Mhm.
about the chasm of experience between grandparents and grandchildren being wide, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden that just kind of dawned on me too. Is like, well, it's probably the widest it's ever been, right? Because you have adult
Yeah.
children that are having children later in life than they ever have been,
Right.
right? And you have this generation right now, the boomer generation, that's living longer than maybe other senior generations have been living. So I think you start kind of widening this out, and this becomes more and more a pervasive problem versus, hey, every
Yeah.
20 years we have new generations coming along, and there's less gap that's happening in terms of
Yeah.
knowledge expansion. So just
Yeah.
wanted
No,
to kind of
totally.
bring that up.
Yeah. And you think about it, right? Like, even though the generations have a huge gap between them, we're all still people, right? And
Mhm.
we're all fundamentally trying to solve for the same problems. We just have different tools with which we solve them, right? So
Yeah.
us growing up, we had a different set of tools than the kids do today. So you can do situational things like, hey, um, when I was 8, I saw a friend being bullied by a couple of fifth graders on the playground, right? Like, how would you
Mm.
handle that? Like, how would you handle that today? Because I can tell you how I handled it then, and maybe you didn't handle it well, right? And so like
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
so because like there's always going to be bullies, there's always going to
Mhm.
be failures, there's always going to be the things that we're all dealing with. So that's where you can find those commonalities, I think.
Mm,
Love it.
that's great. I'm just trying to think where I can find one of those big blue maps so I can drive around. I remember sitting in like the back seat of the car with the right? You like each page
The
is like a full,
Gazetter. Yeah,
yeah.
the
Yeah,
Gazetter. Yep.
yeah.
Oh
The
man.
main we still have a main atlas downstairs.
I
Those
love
huge. Remember how
that. I
big they
love
were?
that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
rely on GPS way too much. You just exposed that in my head while you were talking. I was thinking, I was like, yeah, I'd be done for if I had to
I
do
used I
that.
used to go to AAA. I used to go to AAA because I would travel for work, and I
Yeah.
would
Mhm.
get out a bunch of maps, and I would have to physically highlight the route I was going to take, and then
Oh
try not to
man.
wreck the car. I was
Yeah, right.
like
We're
the
driving
maps are all
down the
open
road
next to you.
and
Distracted driving at its
I was
original. Yep.
definitely you get
Yep.
frustrated, and I had to when we lived in Amsterdam, I was selling to companies in Germany, so I would be driving around Germany, and I don't speak German and didn't, and so you make a mistake, and then you're definitely off the grid. Like
yeah,
you
yeah.
can't like there's no dot on the paper map to get you back where you need
Does
to
it
go.
recalculate for you when you miss the exit?
Shockingly, it does not.
I love that.
Exactly.
So, Chip, I want to keep going here. I
Yeah.
know something we talk about or something that you say is everyone is always on stage, right? So,
Yes.
I just want to play out like a scenario, I think, for people listening. So, let's say a retiree or grandparent, you're at a family barbecue and everything's just starting to feel chaotic and disjointed as family barbecues probably go.
Yeah.
So if this person starts thinking like a performer, right? Take that mindset, I'm always
Yep.
on stage. How can that help them maybe bring some cohesion to the moment with that kind of performer mindset?
Yeah. So a couple of things. So I do an exercise. So in improv, there are no props. You might have chairs or boxes, but that's it. You don't really have
Okay.
any other. So you have to mime everything else. So I do an exercise with the class where I'll say, I'm going to just mime something and then you tell me if I did anything wrong. And I'll go into like a kitchen and I'll get like a cup out of the cabinet and I'll put some water in it and then I'll place it down on an imaginary coffee table. I'll go get a second cup and then I will walk through where I put the imaginary coffee table.
Hmm.
And people are always like, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm like, what's the matter? And they go, we just walked through the table. I'm like, okay, but you realize there's no table there, right? Like, there's no physical table. But
Look
that's
out.
what I mean by you're always on stage. Like all the
Mhm.
details matter. Like people know that that's where the table's supposed to be, and you just walked right through it as if it didn't exist. You just broke, you just lied to us, right? And so lets people understand in a very tangible way that you are always on stage, right? You are always being watched all the time, and I don't mean that in a bad way,
No,
right?
yeah.
The second thing we teach related to that is in improv, the audience is part of the show. They're a critical part of the show as much as any performer. And whereas in a stand-up, the audience is not part of the show, right? They're there to laugh, but it's kind of more of a head-to-head, right? Like I paid my money, make me laugh, funny guy,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
In improv, the audience is part of the show. So the other rule is treat the audience well, right? You also want to make the audience look good.
Yeah.
So those two things together will help you manage this kind of chaotic and disjointed environment, right? Um, so given that, right, remember that, they're watching you, right? Kids are really good at paying attention,
Yeah.
right? Because that's how they navigate the world is because they don't have all the knowledge, so they have to suck up information. So
Mm.
recognize you're being watched, right? Um, Also recognize that you're not every actor is in the spotlight the whole time they're on the stage. So at a family barbecue, when it's chaotic and disjointed, it's just not your time, maybe, if you're
Yeah.
not comfortable with that environment, right? Just let other people be the center of attention for a time, right? And
Yeah.
try and find moments if you're more comfortable one-on-one or maybe off to the side or going into the house to get another glass of lemonade or a beer, right? That's a time to
Yeah.
have the interactions with people and not try and stop what the others are doing and make it less chaotic, right? And not impose yourself on that, but recognize that, hey, listen, it's just not my time to be part of that, right?
Mm.
So on stage, this would work like if a scene were happening if somebody mentioned they were doing a scene in an art museum, I might run on stage and just like be a picture on the wall. Like I won't move. I'll just be one of the
Yeah.
paintings on the wall, right? Or if they're in a Western, I might just roll across the stage like a tumbleweed, right? Like I'm adding to the scene. Like that's my role. I don't have any speaking lines. I'm only there for 3 seconds, but that detail is what makes the scene better. So um, sometimes your role is to be in the background,
I
and it's
like
hard, I
that.
think, for folks that want to interact to
Yeah.
have the patience to be like, you know what, this isn't the time to have a deep conversation about World War II with my granddaughter, right? There's a better time
Yeah.
for that. So
No, I
that so
love
that kind of
that.
like
Yeah.
understanding that you're a small piece of a larger performance that's going on,
Yeah.
I think is helpful. Does that make sense?
Super helpful. Yeah.
It does, and I'll just kind of add in there too, Chip. Is I think one
Yeah.
thing that you're kind of saying is this, going back to kind of that first principle of your only job is to make everyone else look good, right? Is you could see where no, I want to participate so bad, and I want to jump into, Susie's telling her story of high school graduation and how she was
Yeah.
the salutatorian and how she did it, and I want to talk, I want to share my experience about how I did in high school, and I want to jump in, but
Yeah.
again, making them look good is part of this too, and sometimes being in the background and supporting, and you can tell your story later, but again, kind of knowing kind of role and
Yeah.
when and why, I think is really important. So I think it was a good kind of highlight there.
Yeah. And
um
and 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 why do you want to jump in and tell your story? Is it for you, or are you telling it because it's going to help them?
Right.
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 So understanding your own motivations helps too, right? Like, am I doing it because I want to scratch my own itch, or does
Mhm.
my version of the story actually impart something to them that will be helpful?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
totally.
know this is kind of a through thread too, is one challenge that some retirees still face is and this kind of speaks to that, is that there's a feeling that they don't have as much relevance with younger generations, right? And maybe I'm having to jump into conversations to show that I'm relevant still. Hey, I'm over here, guys, I'm relevant.
Right.
So can you talk about a little bit more of that mindset of making others look good, treating the audience well, how that shifts the sense of purpose in a family setting?
Yeah. So, making others look good and treating the audience well, I think are both examples of inclusion, right? Like you're trying to include people, right? As opposed to excluding. And inclusion means more than just participating in the same activity at the same time, like a singer and an audience, right? Like they're both participating, but in very different ways, right? In improv, right? Because the audience and all the actors and the audience are part of the show, you're all equal partners, right? Building something together. But in improv, no one is in charge, but everyone is responsible, right? So I'll say it again. No one's in charge of a scene, right? No one's directing who's going to do what, or there is no director, right? But everyone is responsible for the success of that scene. So in an extreme case where you like literally cannot find a single thing in common with a grandchild, like perhaps you were an ROTC person and you had a very kind of strict and rigid life and you like things orderly and that's, how you do it. And your grandchild is, maybe super creative. They might be goth, right? You literally like the music is different. The books are different, right? Then I would suggest invest time and energy into learning more about them, right? Because you're the one with the wisdom, and you're more likely to be the one to take that. They're unlikely to take that investment in you, right? Because they're just young. So if you show yourself investing, like help me understand your music better, help me understand your philosophy on life, whatever it might be, then that will turn into a conversation, and in that conversation, you will then have opportunities to share your own wisdom, right? So if you treat them like equals in the relationship, even though you're 68 and they're 8, right? But they are equal in the relationship with you, right? To a certain extent, right? You may know more and have done more than them, but relationships are built on sharing time and information together. And I also believe that what you want to be doing, if you want to take a step back, one of the things you're doing when you spend time with family and grandchildren is because you want to build a story together with them. You want them to be part of your story and you want to be part of their story, right? And I think at the core of every story that's ever been written or created, the core of that is a relationship, right? Between a husband and wife, between the moon and the stars, between a rock and a river. Like it doesn't matter what the two entities are, but the relationship is the key thing. And relationships, the currency of relationships is time and attention, right? So if you invest the time, provide like authentic attention, then that relationship will get built and there'll be opportunities to bridge that gap.
That's great. That's great. So I want to kind of take everything we've talked about, right? We have our astronaut dinosaurs, was it? We have some improv techniques and tips. And I just want to paint another picture again for someone who may be listening, just trying to figure out how they can relate and kind of put all this together. So again, we know, improv is often collaborative, unscripted. So let's say I'm a retiree or grandparent and my grandchild is going to spend the weekend with me this summer. How the heck can I use all of these improv principles to make this a fun experience for them, but also for me, right? It's collaborative, right? I think we've talked about that kind of leading up to this. So how can we do it? What are we starting off with?
Yeah, so I think you need to start off with a flexible mindset, right? So I think somebody said famously, no strategy survives contact with the enemy, right? Like as soon as you get on the ground, right? Like your plans are out the window. So you can pretty much expect, it's good to have a structure for your weekend. It's good to know, I want to go play mini golf. I want to go take them for ice cream, go to whatever, go see music. But you know that the day is not going to go the way you think it's going to, right? So you should not expect things to go the way you expect them to. You should expect them to not, right?
Yeah.
And so be comfortable going off script, right? And since no one's in charge and everyone's responsible, right? You can then, when things do go a different direction, if they're not interested or the thing you're doing turns out to be not that much fun, right? You need to demonstrate that their voice, their interests, their needs are equally important to yours, right? So they need to be part of that kind of conversation about how the day is going to play out or the weekend, right? And I think it's important to be comfortable admitting when the activity you're doing isn't working, right? So there are no mistakes in improv, right? You definitely can say things on stage that don't make sense when you say them, that literally popped out of your mouth. So you could be doing a scene about race car drivers, and then all of a sudden you're talking about a dinosaur, and it has no context for the rest of the scene. And this is where taking care of each other comes in. The other actors will figure out a way to justify your choice of a dinosaur at the racetrack, so that in the end it looks like you made a brilliant choice, right? But it's because it was actually a random, unexpected choice, but everyone else made it look good. So there are no mistakes. There are only opportunities, right? So when something doesn't go well, that's an opportunity for you to roll with it and do a yes and together for the situation. So for example, if you're going to take your granddaughter to play miniature golf and a couple holes in, you realize she's not digging it, right? She's bored or she's frustrated or she's not into it, right? You have an option. You can either force her to keep playing, right? Play by the rules and we paid our $8. We're going to do this goddamn thing, right? Or you could completely quit it. You say, listen, this doesn't seem to be working. Let's go do something else entirely, right? Just write it off and move on. Or you could say, listen, are you frustrated? Like, do you want to learn how to do it better? I can help you with that, right? So you could become a teacher. Or you could say, Um, looks like you're not having that much fun. Do you want to make up our own rules for how to play this game? Right. So maybe you take
Hmm.
alternate shots, or maybe she hits your ball and you hit her ball every other hole. Like
Yeah.
find something with the, with their input, right? Like what would make it fun for you, right? And then you build it together. So being flexible, right? Being willing to say yes and when things aren't going well, admit a mistake and turn that mistake into an opportunity as best you can. I think those are the ways you can avoid all the awkward moments that come up
Yeah.
when you're not sure what to do.
I love that.
So I'm going to go very specific then into those rules because
Yeah.
I think you're kind of teeing up my next question or thought here, right? Because obviously I think there's a obviously there's when I'm trying to do new things, there's inevitably going to be things that don't work or don't go right, and
Yeah.
maybe I say something that unintentionally embarrasses somebody, right? I go, oh,
Yeah.
I'm this grandchild and her friend Kelsey, who are on the basketball team together. They're such a great pair, and they're great. And like, oh, I didn't realize that my granddaughter actually hates Kelsey. That they're like bitter enemies, and I can't believe that you told everybody that we were a great team. What were you
Right.
doing? So, talk a little bit about how improv's rules help us. You said kind of make an opportunity here, but help us recover and re-engage gracefully because I can see where again trust maybe gets eroded quickly too
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
saying the wrong thing and they're like whoa, I thought we were on a good level and you just really damaged our relationship by saying that
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. So I think the first thing to do, and this isn't necessarily an improv thing, but I think being gracefully admitting when you may have made a mistake
Yeah.
goes a long way. Like saying, I'm sorry, like honestly being like, I'm really sorry about that. I had no idea you guys were enemies, right? I didn't mean to do it. I apologize. You don't need to justify it. You just need to say, I'm sorry, right? I'm sorry goes a long way. That's just a
Mhm.
life thing. But in improv, um, as I said before, there are no mistakes, right? Those mistakes are opportunities, right? Those are often actually the very best moments in a show when someone does something that seems awkward or bizarre, and then everyone else takes care of you, and you turn it into the best moment in the whole show,
Yeah.
right? So part of it means, um, accepting people for being the flawed creatures that we are, right? And I think when you are willing to apologize and say, "Oh, listen, I think I totally messed that up. My intentions were good, but the outcome was bad. So I really apologize for that." You're also leading by example, right? Because what you're showing is you're saying, even my grandparents, who are sometimes scary figures for kids, right? They're like, they don't see them that often, maybe, and they're older, and it's just hard to connect with them. So when they're apologizing, that is leading by example, right? That's setting the stage for how you want to interact going forward. And again, it builds that trust, right? It shows you've listened to them, right? I listened to you. You're not happy about this thing I did, right? And I'm going to make it right. I'm going to apologize and I'm going to make it right as best I can. And that again builds that trust and shows that you're supporting them and that you're taking care of them as an equal partner in the relationship, right? We're all flawed, imperfect beings, and
Mhm.
improv embraces that and says, let's take our flaws and turn them into wins and opportunities.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I want to dive into something, Chip, that you've brought up a couple times here that we really stuck out to us, and that's the nobody is in charge, but everyone's responsible, right?
Yeah.
So for us, that's just a profound way to kind of view family dynamics here. So can we just kind of maybe go back to whether it's the barbecue or even we see a lot right now, multi-generational houses, right? We have
Yep.
people taking care of their parents while they may also have their own kids in the house still, right? So you not just two
Yeah.
generations. Sometimes we got three here. Can you just kind of share what this looks like and how we can, I don't know, how can we use it? I guess in these situations where there's a lot of mixed generations going on.
Yeah, yeah, it's totally true. That happens in lots of families, and in the I used to work in India and spent a bunch of time there, and most of their families are multi-generational, right? They'll have
Yeah.
cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, great grandparents, all living in the same apartment building or complex. So, I think if you think about the family as an improv troupe, right? There's a bunch of us. We're all actors. We're all putting on this show together tonight, right? We're coming to the family barbecue, and things need to happen. So there are people who are, in reality in charge, right? Like the 8-year-old can't just take the car and drive down to the store, right? Like there are rules and people are
Yeah.
like literally in charge. However, at another level, right, you're all equal members of this troupe that's putting on this show called the Family Barbecue tonight, right? And being part of the team means accepting different roles at different times in the scene. So when maybe the parents are cooking or cleaning, that's a good opportunity for a grandparent to get together with a grandchild and spend some more time together, right? Or, maybe you and the grandchild can set the table together or set out the things that are, set out the meats or whatever needs to be done, right? So look for ways. If you think about the barbecue itself as a team activity, that changes the dynamic, right? You don't think about it
Yeah.
like we're having a barbecue and things will happen for me that result in me getting food and seeing family. If you take a proactive role in that, right, you're equally responsible for everyone else looking good. So how can I help the barbecue? Is anyone talking to grandma? Like she's been over in the corner for a while. Maybe I should go talk to her, right? If I'm an 8-year-old, and vice versa. No one's talking to Janie. So maybe I'll take this time to interact. So it's about thinking about yourself as part of a team and as instead of I'm a person in this family. Does that make sense? That
It
distinction?
does. Yeah. No,
Mhm.
that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And Chip, I want to kind of keep going on this because obviously
Yeah.
you've given a lot of structure to what improv is and how we look at each other and how we think about each other. But I could see where, okay, I'm thinking about all these prompts and these things I could do. But again, I'm intrigued, but maybe I'm a little intimidated by the idea of just trying this, right? And I know you said right off the
Yeah.
top, everybody can do this, right? This
Yeah.
isn't, nobody's excluded from this activity, but if I'm going to start somewhere, right, is there a
Yeah.
simple game, a prompt, a mindset, something that I can use
Yeah.
today to start building these better relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you three. So
Nice.
there's a game called Word at a Time Story, and this is good for either two people or 200 people. And so let's say you have the family sitting around the table, dinner's over, and you're still hanging around. Word at a Time Story is where each person around the table, you go in order, like clockwise or counterclockwise. Each person contributes a word to a story that you're going to build together. So it might be like, once upon a time, there was a guy named Tom. And one day Tom went to the store, like whatever
Yeah.
comes out. And the key to this is you can't prompt anyone. You can't be like, say cat, cat will be funny, right? You got to let people come up with their own words. And you want to do it quickly. So you want to do it as fast as possible
Sure.
because mistakes are part of like saying things that don't make sense are what's fun, right? So once upon a time, there was a guy named Tom. Tom bought a dinosaur. You're like, oh, that's weird.
What?
But you keep going, right? Like
Yeah.
the
Right.
dinosaur's name was Fred, and Fred liked to eat dog biscuits, right? Like those things that seem weird because the velocity of the exercise makes it so that you're going to say stuff that is kind of random, right?
Yeah. It
Because you're
puts
literally
people on
saying
the
whatever pops
spot.
in your
Yeah.
head. But
Yeah.
and then if it doesn't make any sense, you just stop and start a new one, right? So you're like, okay, that one, and we'll just wipe the slate clean, start a new story on the next one. So that's really
Chip,
fun. Yeah,
and just because I think this one part that's intriguing me is that, okay, so you start your story and you're going one word at a time around.
yeah,
How do you end? I guess is my question because I can see where like
yeah.
the fun level starts declining because you're like, this is just taking way too long and it's not really going anywhere and it's not really wrapping up. Like, how do you kind of go from an improv
Yeah.
mindset? How do you know that we're trying to wrap things up?
So a couple things. First of all, if you know that things aren't wrapping up effectively, that demonstrates that you already know how a story should sound,
Yeah.
right? So without any
Hmm.
training, you already know like this is going on forever, right? It's not really going anywhere. So you can just stop it, be like, all right, this isn't going anywhere. We'll just start a new story, right? Like, because what could happen is like he went to the store and then he went home and then he went to bed and then he got up. Like now it's just
Yeah.
this endless sequence of activity. You're like, okay, let's stop that.
One
So
Hmm.
person's just
so
saying and every time it's their turn.
yeah, exactly, right.
Right.
So the other part of it is when you've hit in improv and in acting, it's called beats or stories have beats, like things that happen that are notable. And so you'll know when you get a big laugh because of something that was said, that might be the end of that story, right?
Hmm.
And then you want to stop it there because you don't want to oversell it, right? You don't want
Sure.
to keep going after the big laugh. And you start a new one. So you just kind of know because you're already a storyteller.
Yeah.
And the game is super flexible, so you can just stop anytime you want and start a new one. Uh,
Gotcha.
so so it's and there's no mistake. So if someone says a word that Tom went to the anthrax, you're like, all right, well that doesn't make any sense. We'll start a new story
Yeah.
with Mary, right? And then off you
Yeah.
go. There's
Hmm.
no downside. So that's one game.
Yep.
Another game is the alphabet game, where each person has to say a sentence in the story that starts with the next letter of the alphabet. So you'd go like, after dinner, Tom went upstairs. Before he went to bed, Tom brushed his teeth. Couldn't do that. There wasn't any toothpaste. Downstairs, he went to look for, like you do
Yeah.
And it always creates, it's fun when you get to the Q's and the Z's of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's like word at a time, but it's a full sentence, and each sentence has to start with the next letter of the alphabet. So that's kind of a fun
Like
one.
that.
And then the last one is a game called Excuses, where somebody will throw out, and you can rotate who the prompter is, but you throw out like, hey, you guys were all late for work today. Why was that? And then each person gets to provide a different excuse until you run out of excuses, right? So it's like, I was late because my car died. I was late because the dog ate my homework. I was late because I got caught on the space shuttle. Like, and it can be increasingly more outlandish as you go around. And when you run out of stuff, you just start a new prompt. Okay, why did you fail your test? And then everybody gets to talk about the excuses about why they failed their test. So it's like you're not really telling a story so much, but you're creating this like tableau of reasons why something didn't happen, which is kind of fun.
Nice.
All
Nice.
right.
Yeah.
Love that.
We got it. Everyone
Yeah.
listening, we got the 3 games. There you go. Take them to the
Those
family
and you don't need
barbecue,
any,
and
yeah,
we're
yeah, you don't need any prompts, toys, pencils. Like it's all
yeah.
word games. So
Yeah.
it's really easy to do anywhere in the car, at the barbecue, anywhere on the
Oh, road
boat.
trip game. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a
That's
good road trip
one
game
there.
too.
Yep. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, Chip, so I do have one kind of final question for you. It's a little bit off topic. Again, your answer may bring it back on topic,
Yeah.
but we want to kind of ask a question directly to you. So obviously, the name of our show, Retirement Success in Maine Podcast. We're all about helping people find their retirement success or define it. So I have to ask you, Chip, kind of what does that look like for you? How are you going to find your personal retirement success?
Yeah. So if you're asking what does success look like for me in retirement,
Yeah.
I would say it's two. I can boil it down to two things, right? So number one, if I could write and teach full time, that would be how I would. I would love to volunteer also, but in terms of like my days are going to be spent writing and teaching other people how to be better storytellers. And uh, the other thing, which might even be more important, is I think the only commodity that we have is time
Yeah.
that matters. And we have precious little control over that as it is, but we do have some, right? And you can choose how you spend your
Mhm.
time and whom you spend it with. And so I choose to spend it with family and friends and not with people who are negative or, are kind of looking to tear other people down, right? Like I feel
Mhm.
like life is hard enough. Like let's make it easier for each other, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so for me, writing and teaching, and then spending time with the people that I care about the most.
It's
Love that.
fantastic.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Well,
Thank you.
Chip, yeah, thanks for coming on our show. Again, I know we personally learned a lot from you today, and just
Yeah.
kind of also from a human to human relationship piece of just having more ways to just kind of better our relationships in our lives. And I think that's a takeaway. Hopefully, all you out in the audience got as well. But Chip, really appreciate coming on our show and just sharing your expertise with us today. It was really fun.
Of course, Ben and Curtis, thank you again so much for having me. It's been a super fun conversation to have. I love what you guys are doing. I think it's really important to, especially as we're all living longer and longer, thankfully, to figure out ways to make sure that we make that time meaningful, right? So thank you guys for that.
All right, appreciate
Appreciate
it, Chip.
that.
Take care.
Yeah.
Cheers.
So Ben, that was probably one of the more fun and kind of lighthearted conversations we've had on this show in a while. I think it was very informative, right, and very useful. But going at it in a different way with improv, I think was really fun with Chip.
Yeah, and I think it goes right to our conversation we had with Amy Kay, like I think it was like episode 37 or so.
Yeah.
Just kind of getting better relationships, right? And whether it be family or friends or spouse, kind of having more ways to communicate in a way that gets you back on track and introduces fun, laughter, trust. Again, I know he talked about being fully present, and there's something in here I think for every retiree who wanted more
Yeah.
connection to life.
Yeah.
We are going to link Chip's pieces, his website, his book,
Yeah.
Questions of Iron and Blood. We'll link to Amazon, Grow Story LLC. So say you are in one of those positions of you have a business that want to tell their why story,
Yeah.
or even just kind of read a little bit more about Chip, or even your own story, by the way. He does do some of those as well. He's just a fun guy to be around. So we encourage you to go reach out to him and see if there's a collaboration to have with Chip.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Ben, all those links and everything will be on our blog, which again is blog.guidancepointllc.com/117. This is episode
Mm.
117. We're climbing up here. But
Lyman,
yeah, so
under
go
the
check it
charts.
out. We'll link everything there. Again, huge thank you to Chip Brewer for coming on the show and teaching us a little bit about improv and how we can use it everywhere. with everyone. So thank you again to Chip. Thank you for everyone tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.